At the height of the gold rush, Rick Ness was one of the most successful miners. He lost his mind when a rookie mechanic fixed his $1 million excavator. A little boy did fix his $1 million machine. We will look at the details and ups and downs of Rick Ness's mining operations in this video. We will see how the seasons changed, how technology broke down, and how driven Ness was to find rare gold. Come with us as we look at the exciting shows, with a focus on how Rick Ness's never-ending search for wealth in the hard desert changes, succeeds, and fails. In his never-ending search for money, Rick finds himself traveling into uncharted territory because he thinks he has found his most important goal yet. His huge machine for moving dirt is gone, and his team is getting smaller. The odds are against him. When Rick realizes how serious the situation is and posts that a skilled mechanic is needed right away, it's a turning point. Now, a 20-year-old student becomes an important figure because he is asked to show off his skills by building the complex, multi-million-dollar 750 backhoe. The apprentice carefully attaches the bucket and 750 book stick, showing how complicated the job is. They were moved safely by a movable base set to a small gauge. The thought of having to deal with Duncan Creek's various terrain adds another level of difficulty. Torsten, the apprentice, changes the tracks expertly by slowly loosening the bolts that hold the chassis in place. He cleverly positions the digger with the help of the boom, showing how creative the team is when things go wrong. The 750's bucket is particularly impressive because it is so big. It's 3 times bigger than the 480's. Time is important for Rick and his team because they work in less than a half week. Their staff is only 4 people, and they don't have a fixed driver. Rick's earlier success, in which he made an average of just over 70 ounces of gold per week, is very different from this situation. The problems that are coming up show how strong, flexible, and determined the team is as they keep going after their huge gold goal. The group is aware that Carl, the gold miner, is not there and stresses how important he is to fixing machine problems. They both hope Carl gets better and are worried about taking care of the equipment's upkeep without a trained tech. Most people agree that Torsten's ability fall of the year. Rockies will be closed for the year because of the snow, says Rick. This choice makes someone suddenly sneeze, which draws attention to the problems and irritations the mining operation is having. The fact that the pay in Rally Valley is so wet shows that they have hit the water table. To fix this, Rick adds a pump. Cutting that goes very quickly and exciting scenes. People say that the lack of progress the next morning is because the pump is too small, but it looks like there may be more issues. Rick decides out of the blue to take another pump without permission, which leads to a dry cut the next day. The story is mostly about the drama of the pump problem, but the water table's uneven effects make you wonder about some things. Since Rick has to pay $40,000 for the pump, it becomes more likely that Fred, who seems to have endless resources, could help with money. Even though there are problems and disagreements, the cleanup goes well, and 206.09 ounces of gold are found. These different kinds of problems and good outcomes show how unpredictable gold digging can be in the winter. As soon as winter comes early on Rick's claim, he might call all of his miners together for an encouraging speech and tell them to work harder. This is a common theme during the mining season. Rick sets up 2 machines to feed the 400-yard-per-hour wash facility so that he can get the most work done. One loader had electrical problems while it was working. These problems can be quickly fixed by cleaning the links between the batteries. Suddenly, a lot of the cut gives way, which makes the person angry and makes them swear and rub their face. Drone footage shows that the group quickly runs away because they are afraid for their lives and their gear. As the last step in the cleanup process is completed, an amazing 393 ounces are found. For the season, Rick has now weighed 2,047 ounces of gold. When you look more closely at the final gold weigh-ins, you can see that he found 19% of his gold in the last 4 weeks of the season. This is an amazing feat of gold mining. Overall, it was a great search, but do you remember when Rick's girlfriend showed up and saved the day? Lise, Rick's girlfriend, helps out a team member who is hurt. Rick's co-worker got lost in the mine madness of the bacon strip, but Elise's surprise truck skills turned things around. Rick now has 502 ounces of gold for the season, which was worth over $900,000. The crew won with 80.47 ounces of gold. To get to lower, nugget-rich ground, Rick Ness sped through the bacon strip at Duncan Creek. Riley, his new partner, wasn't at work, and he couldn't get in touch with him or tell him when he would be back. This made him angry. It made Rick feel bad, especially after a hard year. With only 2 rock trucks, Rocky could not work at full speed. Elise, Rick's girlfriend, offered to drive trucks to help. Rick gave it some thought, but in the end chose to let her learn with crews. Elise amazed everyone by being able to handle the basics and even learn more harder lessons, even though she had never been digging before. Rocky was back with 3 trucks, and Elise was driving one of them to help them move forward. Once again, Rick was pleased to see that the crew had reached 80.47 ounces of gold, which is more than $145,000. Rick has now caught 502 ounces this season, which is worth more than $900,000. This is a big accomplishment for the small group. The show ended with a funny moment where the crew made fun of Elise for something she did on the rock truck that no one saw coming. The Ness team has their best mining week yet, making almost $300,000. When Monster Red lost efficiency because of a problem with the pipeline, Rick Ness was put in a tough spot. And surprising 181 ounces of gold were found in just 70 hours, thanks to a quick fix for a finger trap and quick thought. Rick is now hoping that he will reach the rare 2,000-ounce mark. There was a lot of competition for Rick Ness to win the 2,000-ounce prize, which was the biggest award of the season. But because of problems with the seat conveyor, Monster Red dropped from moving 300 yards of dirt per hour to moving only 200 yards of dirt per hour. Its once efficient operation came to a sudden stop. Rick was afraid that he might lose gold, so he called a company right away and prayed that they could fix it quickly. There was still a lot of yardage left in the season, so Rick knew how important it was to fix this right away. During a very important meeting, Rick told Proctor Barry and Scott Ezekiel about the problem of rocks going back down the conveyor belt more slowly. It was suggested that a finger trap, which is a frame with 8 metal fingers, be built to catch rocks and let pay dirt flow through. Rick agreed to the idea and emphasized how important it was, even though building was supposed to stop. As smart as ever, Barry and Scott looked through the boneyard for extra parts that they could use to make Rick's finger trap. This smart fix took several hours to finish, and Monster Red was now ready for a test run. The team was nervously waiting for the results and thought how much gold they would really find in Rally Valley. The group found an amazing 181 ounces of gold in just 70 hours, which was more than they thought they would find. Because of how well it turned out, Rick said it was one of their biggest gold finds. He told the team thank you and said he was excited to mine at Monster Red's fast pace to keep the momentum going toward the elusive 2,000-ounce goal. Troy Taylor, the owner of the land where Rick Ness is looking for 2,000 ounces of gold, gives him a chance by offering to buy the land with a 150-ounce down payment. Ness now has the most gold he has ever won. Kyle Lawson, a rookie, is in charge of a bold plan that makes an amazing 315 ounces every week. Rick is driven to succeed, so he makes a promise to own land even though there are problems. Mine manager Rick Ness staked his young career on a 190-foot deep-cut test drilling, which increased the chance of a $5 million gold hit. Rick is 800 ounces short of his goal weight of 2,000 ounces because the results haven't lived up to his hopes. Rick is worried about his survival as winter comes and the high-grade pay layer stays out of reach. He isn't just enjoying digging a big hole. No, Rick knows he needs to find an answer and thinks about the best way to reach his season's goal. Troy Taylor, the owner of the Duncan Creek house that Rick is said to be renting, calls him out of the blue. Troy makes Rick an offer to buy the land and puts down 150 ounces, which is equal to $250,000. Rick is shocked by the offer, but he says he'll think about it and get back to you right away. Rick is having a hard time making a profit after spending a lot of money on new tools, so this offer comes at a bad time. Rick feels the rush and thinks of new ways to get more done and keep things going forward. He tells his team about a bold plan. He wants to run both wash stations at the same time. Rick talks to Kyle Lawson, who used to work as an iron worker in Yukon, and asks him to run a single workshop by himself so that this plan can work. Kyle takes on the job of running Rocky, the wash plant, even though he doesn't know much about mining. Because he is always short-staffed, Rick counts on Kyle to bring in the extra 150 ounces needed for the down payment. Since Rocky is back at work, Kyle is in charge of running the wash plant and filling the dirt by himself. He is in charge of the process and makes sure that the ashes don't get in the way of the flow. Even though it's hard, Kyle is able to process the gold and reports an amazing 315 ounces of output for the week, with 219.8 ounces coming from Monster Red and 95 ounces from Rocky. Rick is so excited about his huge gold find that he goes to talk to the homeowner, Troy Taylor, about buying the land. Rick is sure of his choice, so he agrees to buy the land and says that the down payment can't be returned. Rick says he is sure he will be able to pay back the loan before the end of the season, and the deal says that the fee plan will continue into the next season. As Rick gets closer to his goal of having his own land, he thinks about the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Rick is amazed by Monster Red's digging skills. When Monster Red makes a comeback, Rick Ness sets a 2,000-ounce goal for him. A new hopper feeder gets around problems and boosts output to more than 300 yards per hour. As winter gets closer, things get more urgent, and Rick's determination to finish his gold mine project on time stands out. Rick Ness, the mine boss, has to do the hard work of bringing Monster Red back to life in order to make his 2,000-ounce goal. Within 48 hours, his goal is to develop and improve the plant so that it works as efficiently as possible. A big LRS feeder with twice as much capacity as the old model is part of the plan, along with a simplified design that doesn't have any extra lines. Installing it is hard, especially when a heavy chute makes the toe lift work less well. The group changes the wire to stop more damage. The updated hopper feeder in Monster Red makes it possible for it to do more while keeping the focus on speed and ease of use. Rick thinks that running the plant at over 300 yards per hour will make it much more productive. The team brings Monster Red back to life after a scary moment with a broken part and sets it up to look at Rally Valley's rich pay dirt. It's becoming more and more important to get Monster Red up and running as winter approaches. Rick is determined to be successful in his gold mining project, as shown by his desire to end the season on a high note. Rick is looking forward to the arrival of the new hopper feeder and the chance to make money from Rally Valley's deep-cut pay dirt, especially now that Monster Red is ready for fight. The major turning point in Rick's journey to financial success and the completion of his 2,000-ounce goal was the repair of the wash plant. The leaves changing colors are a steady reminder that time is running out to get things done, so the rush is on. The biggest gold weights of Season 12 come from Parker using Lucifer's wash plant at Scribner Creek to its fullest, which yields 337.45 ounces. Rick's team can now clean up 3 ounces per hour. Parker's team at Big Red is having a great week because 596.6 ounces are worth more than $1 million. The story gives a short summary of the problems and successes that come with gold digging. The team meets at Scribner Creek for the gold weigh-in. They greet each other and talk about what they have planned for the week. Parker talks about the costs of the process. He says that he had to pay $350,000 to get rid of his deepest dirt, which added up to $1.4 million. Lucifer, his wash plant, needs to produce more than 180 ounces to break even, which will be hard to do since it only produced 84 ounces last week. When things went wrong, the team made changes that improved the wash plant's performance and cut down on the amount of water it used. Torsten gets the 750 digger ready for Duncan Creek's rough ground by carefully moving the movable undercarriage. Things are getting more exciting as the gold show gets closer. Since Mitch fixed the plant, he quickly shows off the result, which is a big step forward. The cleanup from the 750 makes an amazing 337.45 ounces, which is more than expected and brings in more than $600,000. Now, Rick's business runs for less than 2 weeks with only 4 employees and no dedicated mechanic, which is very different from last year's average of just over 70 ounces per week. The difficulties bring out the team's ability to change and keep going. The story then moves on to Rick's cleanup, where he gets 3 times as much gold as before, up from 1 ounce per hour. The crew is happy about the success and points out the big steps forward that have been made. As the team finishes up and thanks each other for their work, the friendship stays strong. The gold keeps coming out. Mitch's hard work pays off.
Had built a reputation alongside Parker. Their story was intertwined, and the news of Rick leaving shocked fans, leaving them wondering if the dynamic of the show would ever be the same again. One key moment in Episode 4 was all it took to shake things up, as Rick's decision-making led to the shutdown of a gold mining operation, and the consequences were far-reaching. Production came to a standstill, morale plummeted, and Parker was left to pick up the pieces. As a leader, Parker's patience had worn thin, and this was a big turning point in their relationship. Rick, who had always been a loyal and hard-working member of the team, suddenly found himself under intense pressure. The stakes were high, and the tension was palpable. Rick's exit wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. After all, he had been a key player on Parker's team for years. But the tension between the two men had been building, and eventually, it reached a breaking point. As Rick moved on, he left behind not just a job, but a world that had once been his focus. He set out on his own, launching his own mining operation in the Klondike. This wasn't about quitting. It was about starting over and proving that he could thrive without being under someone else's shadow. He was determined to show that his talents weren't just tied to Parker's crew, and he began to carve out his own path in the gold mining industry. For Gold Rush, Rick's departure left a void that was hard to ignore. Fans were stunned, and many felt a sense of loss at seeing one of their favorite personalities leave the screen. His journey on the show had been a central narrative, and when that was suddenly gone, the show was forced to adjust. The question on everyone's mind was whether Gold Rush could continue to thrive without such a major character in the picture. For Parker, the show had to go on. While Rick's departure marked the end of a chapter, it didn't mean the end of the operation. The crew continued to mine, and while Rick's absence was felt, Parker kept the focus on the goal, striking gold. The dynamic of the crew shifted, but Parker's leadership remained the cornerstone of the operation. Surprisingly, the show managed to carry on without Rick's presence. Eventually, Rick's exit marked a turning point not only for Parker and his crew, but for the entire Gold Rush franchise. For Rick, it was about finding a new path and proving his worth on his own terms. For Parker, it was a lesson in leadership and adaptation. Both men learned from their experiences, and though their relationship had changed, their individual stories continued. Gold Rush kept rolling, and so did Rick, forging a new future in the unforgiving world of gold mining. Rick, a seasoned professional with years of experience in mining, quickly earned Parker's respect due to his deep knowledge and experience in the industry. As Parker took on more responsibility and developed a leadership style, Rick was content in his role and often did the work without seeking to lead the operation himself. However, tensions began to surface as Parker became more focused on making critical decisions, and Rick felt increasingly sidelined. The root of their tension was a clash of personalities. Parker, always driven and determined, demanded perfection from his crew and expected Rick to keep up with his high standards. Rick, on the other hand, had a more laid-back approach that didn't always align with Parker's fast-paced, sometimes rigid approach to gold mining. As pressure mounted, Rick's relaxed attitude started to clash with Parker's increasingly intense focus on success, leading to more significant issues. As the season wore on, the tension between Parker and Rick became undeniable, with Parker growing frustrated by Rick's lack of accountability and Rick feeling that Parker was becoming too hard to work with. The once close friendship built on mutual respect was beginning to fray under the pressure of constant disagreements. The roots of this conflict weren't simply based on mismanagement or mistakes. They were a product of two men trying to navigate the demands of gold mining in their own ways, and neither was willing to compromise. Parker's growing success meant he couldn't afford to let things slide, while Rick, who had been with him from the beginning, may have felt like his experience should count for more in tough situations. Their leadership styles simply didn't align, leading to a breakdown in their communication and teamwork. In earlier seasons, there had been hints that their relationship wasn't as smooth as it seemed. Parker's increasing ambition and the expansion of his mining operations put a strain on the dynamics between him and his crew. As Parker's expectations grew, so did his need for control, which may have led to his impatience with Rick's more laid-back approach. Rick may have felt that his contributions weren't being recognized as he transitioned from mentor to subordinate under Parker's direction. As Parker and Rick's relationship became more strained, it became clear that they were on different paths. The bond that had once been built on mutual respect began to crumble, and it became increasingly evident that their friendship was no longer what it had once been. Parker and Rick's explosive fallout reminds us that even the strongest bonds can be tested under pressure.